Tom Bauer didn't just drop a theory, he detonated a question that refuses to go away. What if this marriage isn't breaking suddenly, but slowly, strategically, right in front of everyone?
It's impossible for the marriage to continue. I think the children keep them together. I think the lack of escape for Harry to back to the royal family will keep them together. But they're under huge pressure now because of the finances. And I think that is always a huge test, a big test on any relationship.
10 reasons. Not one emotional guess, not a passing rumor, 10 calculated, layered reasons why Meghan might one day walk away from Prince Harry. And here's the unsettling part. According to Tom Bauer, this isn't about something that might happen. It's about something that may have already started, quietly, subtly, piece by piece. The kind of unraveling that doesn't announce itself but leaves clues everywhere. So why does this feel less like a prediction and more like a timeline? Because when you go back, really go back, you see a version of Prince Harry that almost doesn't match the present at all. The happy prince. That's what people called him. Smiling, grounded, connected, a man who built charities, who moved between continents with purpose, who looked like he belonged exactly where he was. And then something shifted. Not overnight, not dramatically, but enough that people began asking questions they didn't ask before. Questions that don't have easy answers.
And I think it's really Meghan. He's under, I was already said in my book, Betrayal, that he was brainwashed by Meghan. And of course, he continues to be brainwashed by her. And he is actually, I think, by now at wit's end. He doesn't know what to do. He's been humiliated in London today. He's going to, for the rest of the week, try to restore some credibility. But in the end, he's going to fail.
Tom Bauer draws a sharp line. Before Meghan, after Meghan, and suddenly everything that once felt stable starts looking uncertain. Santali, once tied to Harry's identity, turns into a legal confrontation. Archewell becomes a subject of scrutiny. Deals that were supposed to explode into global success begin slowing down instead. Partnerships hesitate. Momentum fades. And then comes the uncomfortable suggestion: what happens when the very thing that once elevated someone begins to lose its power?
Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Right.
The Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. And I think as of this week, the signal for her great problem.
Because this is where it stops being about public image and starts becoming about value. Tom Bauer's argument cuts deeper than headlines. He suggests that Meghan has always moved in alignment with growth, influence, elevation, not emotion, not loyalty, advancement, and if Prince Harry, once a gateway to global status, no longer offers that same leverage, what happens next? Does the relationship bend or does it break?
Now she's just stuck with this depressed ginger who has absolutely no family, no friends, and no money. This was not hashtag part of the plan. So what is she supposed to do now? Now, if she's smart, and she is that, she's very savvy, she will find a way to bounce past him to some other taker who might actually just love the guy. She will take her royal kids, who can still go by prince and princess, and find the billion.
Watch closely, because the pattern doesn't shout, it whispers. Appearances begin to change. Meghan stepping out alone more often, events, meetings, carefully curated moments that don't always include Prince Harry. And when they do appear together, is it connection or coordination? Is it personal or strategic? And then the narrative takes a sharper turn, because Tom Bauer doesn't stop at observation. He builds a pattern, a history, a repetition. He points backward to understand what might happen forward. Relationships that once existed and then didn't. Trevor Engelson, a name that becomes more than just a past, it becomes a reference point, a question. And when Piers Morgan enters the conversation with claims of being ghosted after serving a purpose, the pattern starts to feel less coincidental and more intentional. So what does that pattern suggest? That proximity has conditions, that relevance matters, that usefulness, however harsh that word sounds, might define longevity. And if that's true, then what happens when the circumstances change? Because Tom Bauer pushes the idea even further. He suggests that even deeply personal relationships haven't been immune to distance when they no longer serve a forward motion. And if that applies universally, then why would this marriage be different? Now step back and look at the larger picture for me. Fame, that word sits quietly at the center of everything. According to Tom Bauer, it was never just a side effect, it was the goal. Before Prince Harry, the trajectory was steady but limited. After Prince Harry, it exploded. Global recognition, constant attention, a level of visibility that most never reach. But here's the twist that makes this story unsettling. What happens when that spotlight dims? Because Tom Bauer suggests it already has. Deals weakening, public perception dividing. Doors that once opened effortlessly now hesitating. And if the original strategy was built on expansion, on reaching higher, on becoming bigger, then what does stagnation feel like inside that reality? Pressure? Frustration? Or something even more dangerous, recalculation? And just when it feels like the pressure couldn't build any higher. Tom Bauer shifts the focus to something even more volatile: money. The one factor that doesn't hide behind smiles or staged appearances. Because beneath the surface of every public moment, there is a private reality that has to be sustained, and according to Tom Bauer, that reality is becoming harder to maintain. Deals that once promised stability begin to fade, income streams slow down, and suddenly the lifestyle that once looked effortless starts to look expensive. Not just expensive, unsustainable if the inflow doesn't match the outflow. And that's where the tension quietly deepens, because when finances tighten, relationships don't stay untouched, they react, they strain, they expose fractures that were easier to ignore when everything was flowing smoothly. What makes this even more unsettling is the contrast between backgrounds, the difference in how money is understood, handled, and expected. According to Tom Bauer, Meghan carries an awareness of financial pressure that Prince Harry never had to develop. And that difference doesn't just sit quietly, it creates friction. Because one side sees urgency, necessity, the need to keep things moving, while the other side may still be adjusting to a world where nothing is automatically provided. And when that imbalance grows, it doesn't just stay about money, it becomes about responsibility, expectation, and control. It becomes about who is carrying the weight and who is being seen as the weight. And then the narrative twists again. Because Tom Bauer doesn't just point to financial strain, Tom Bauer introduces something even more destabilizing, a future that doesn't align. On one side, Prince Harry is described as looking backward, toward England, toward unfinished connections, toward a version of life that still feels unresolved. On the other side, Meghan is described as looking forward, rooted in California, focused on expansion, on building something independent, something that doesn't require stepping back into a structure she has already left behind. And when two directions pull away from each other like that, it doesn't create balance, it creates distance. Slow at first, then undeniable. But the most provocative suggestion Tom Bauer makes isn't about money or geography, it's about options. The idea that Meghan doesn't just react to circumstances, but prepares for alternatives. The suggestion that there is always another path being considered, another door that could open if the current one no longer leads where it once did. And that possibility alone changes everything, because it shifts the dynamic from commitment to calculation. It raises the question that no one says out loud, but everyone feels building underneath: what happens if a better opportunity appears? Then come the moments that feel small, but refuse to stay small. Public interactions that seem slightly off, gestures that don't quite land, brief flashes where connection looks replaced by distance. Tom Bauer points to these moments not as proof, but as signals, tiny pieces of a larger pattern that only becomes visible when you step back and see them together. Because one moment can be dismissed, two can be explained, but a pattern demands attention. And as this pattern builds, Tom Bauer paints a picture of isolation, particularly around Prince Harry. A life that has slowly shifted away from familiar anchors, away from long-standing connections, into something far more contained. And in that containment, dependence grows. But dependence, Tom Bauer suggests, doesn't always strengthen a relationship, it can tilt it, change its balance, redefine its power. Because when one person becomes the center of everything, the dynamic stops being equal. It becomes fragile in a completely different way. And finally, Tom Bauer brings it back to the one thing that still holds undeniable weight: the title, the identity, the connection that continues to open doors even as everything else shifts. But even that, according to Tom Bauer, isn't permanent, because value changes, influence influence evolves, and what once guaranteed attention doesn't always guarantee it forever. So the question lingers, heavier than everything that came before. If that final layer of value begins to fade, if the very thing that ties everything together loses its power, what remains? Because by the time you reach this point, the story doesn't feel like speculation anymore. It feels like a series of signs, all pointing in the same direction, all building toward a possibility that becomes harder to dismiss with every passing moment. And the most unsettling part isn't that Tom Bauer is asking whether this marriage could end.